Alright, so this is my Adventure Inzektor deck profile. I wanted to remake this video because the first one was really long and a little rambly, and I didn't do a great job elaborating how the adventure engine even works in Inzektors, considering how much they need their normal summon. So this time around I wanted to be a bit more brief, get through the entire deck a little bit faster, and then I'll show just an example combo of what you can do to get what you can do once you open with a hand that can play the adventure engine, and like what that hand even kind of looks like. So just to get into the actual cards, we're running 3 Aquamancer, 1 Right, 1 Fateful, 1 Griffin, 1 Dracoback, and 1 Griffin Rider. This is pretty standard, but you might notice that I'm only running 1 Right. That's because, as I said, not every Inzektor hand can actually resolve the full adventure engine and still be able to do like their full combos and stuff. So you won't have access to this all the time. Right is the card that locks you, and it's the card I want to open with the least. If I open with Water Enchantress, then I can at least use it to bait an Ash Blossom, maybe, if they don't want me to add the Rite of Aramasir. Um, and it also puts like a level 3 in the Banish Zone for Leviair later down the line. This is okay to run at 3 because using it as bait doesn't cost anything. If I see any of these 3 cards, however, it's not entirely dead because these all have some neat synergies with the rest of the deck. Griffin Rider, it can just be special summoned on an empty board. You don't have to control a token, and that's just another body that you can use as link fodder. Adventure searches both of these cards and doesn't lock you into anything, so once again, you know, a pretty good card to open with sometimes. Dracoback is the most interesting card to open with because it just being an equip spell that can equip to anything means that you can use it to trigger Inzektor effects. And so just having that extra card that not only can you set so that Hornet becomes live, but you can actually use to get extra triggers, just allows the deck to be a lot more explosive and more consistent. Now, I don't rely on this engine. In fact, I leave it in the deck for game 1, and then games 2 and 3, these are the 7 cards that I'm going to be side decking out. If I'm going second, I really don't want to see the adventure engine. I'd rather have interaction for my opponent's turn so that I have an easier time breaking their board. And so I'll side these cards out, side in cards that I think are explicitly either needed in the matchup or better going second, and then play from there. If I think I'm just going first and that the adventure engine is fine, I'll leave it in. And so that's what's kind of cool about this, is it's pretty flexible. You could also just replace these with generically good things. Forbidden Droplet is really, really good in Inzektors because there's a lot of cards you really don't care about discarding. And, you know, negating a few key cards is sometimes very important. So, yeah, I like this for now. It's been good to me. There haven't been many instances where I've opened, like, the adventure engine and just been forced to not be able to do anything. So it's working pretty okay for now. Now on to the actual Inzektor core. We've got 3 Dragonfly, 3 Mantis, 3 Zektrike Ko-Oh. These are the bread and butters. You need to max out on all copies. Dragon and Centipede are like the main backbone of the deck. Zektrike is just an incredible card. It's crazy that such a card exists and Inzektors aren't good. Just goes to show the age of the archetype. But yeah, you really just need to max out on all copies of this. Then we've got 3 Ladybug, 3 Hornet, and then 1 each of Mantis, Weevil, and Zectcalibur. Ladybug at 3 is a lot more important now because Centipede plus Ladybug searches Zektrike, and that gets you to full combo. Ladybug is really important when you're going first to have like things to trigger. Hornet is a little bit less important, but for now, I think it's very important to just max out on as many enablers as possible for your trigger cards. Because even if you open Hornet and it's not ideal, maybe you could get something to work and, you know, that's good. It's also just more names in the deck because Zektrike has to specifically send an Inzektor card. So having as many Inzektors as you can that without like going into bricking territory is a good idea. And that leads me into Mantis, Weevil, and Zectcalibur. I was running 2 of each of these at one point, but I found that that was a little bricky. It didn't quite always get me the starting hands I needed, and having those extra resources for turn 2 wasn't very valuable, specifically because it's pretty easy to put Inzektor cards back in the deck if you really need them. So I've cut them down to 1 apiece, and it's been working just fine. So that's a pretty agreed upon ratio for most Inzektor players. You'll see, their decks running that specific number of the main Inzektor cards, and that's pretty much it. However, this build specifically also runs Giga Cricket and 2 Hopper. Cricket is very, very cool. Unlike the other Gigas, it can't equip from hand, but it can equip from the graveyard, and it does so by banishing an insect. This puts, a dragonfly in the banish zone for you to bring back with Leviar, for example. It's also something that you can pop with Hornet so that you can get 2 summons off a dragonfly instead of just 1. And there have been a lot of situations where I managed to discard Cricket over a combo and just, been playing through interruptions. And then because I had the Cricket in the graveyard, I was able to get to full combo when I otherwise wouldn't have had it. It's not ideal. There are some situations where it can be a brick. It's definitely not a card you really want to draw. It's a card you want to leave in your deck to either search for a discard later or to special summon and use as fodder. So, but the few times where it's been useful, it has actually saved me. And so I'm not comfortable in cutting it yet. I think it's a very nice one-up to have. Hopper, on the other hand, has screwed me over a lot because this card sucks. However, it serves a very specific purpose in the deck. It is an Inzektor with an inherent level of 4, which enables you to go into level 4 plays a lot easier. It is technically an emergency starter because it can send itself when it is equipped, but that equip effect can't be used on the first turn, and even though it doesn't say it, it is technically once per turn because of the clause that's on the effect. And, that's not good. The only other purpose this card serves is that while it's equipped to an Inzektor monster, that monster's level is increased by 4. So, one of the big things you want to make in this deck is Hope Harbinger. And for a lot of the combo lines, it's very easy to get one of your monsters to level 8, but it's hard to get a second one to level 8. If you are playing 2 Hopper, you can just special summon a Hopper and equip it with Hopper. It's level 8. That has been kind of a crux for a lot of combos, and so I think playing 2 Hopper right now is vital. If, heaven forbid, they ever make a level 4 Inzektor that increases level by 4 and is actually playable, I would get rid of this in a heartbeat and replace it for 2 of those. So, but for right now, we just have to make do with what we got. Now on to some more, kind of generic stuff that supports the deck. We've got a little Bee Trooper package. We've got 3 Scale Bomber, 1 Sting Lancer, and 1 Fly and Sting. Scale Bomber is pretty self-explanatory. It's a level 3 insect that special summons itself, but it's also a Ghost Ogre for monster effects while it's face up on the field because you can tribute itself to activate that effect. That's really, really good for playing through, for example, Appaloosa. If they don't spend the Appaloosa charge to negate Scale Bomber's summon, then they just literally can't use Appaloosa anymore unless they have another monster to negate. Because if they do, Scale Bomber can change the Appaloosa, and since Scale Bomber destroys it, Appaloosa's attack can't be reduced, and therefore it doesn't negate. So they have to spend the Appaloosa charge to negate Scale Bomber, and if they do, that makes Appaloosa a lot smaller, and you could potentially hit over it. So that's, it offers some ways to play around it. And otherwise, it's just a really nice extender. You can use it for link materials. It's a level 3, so it can go into, for example, Cicada King if your hand's really bad. It's just very, very flexible, very, very versatile. There's not many extenders that you would consider playing over this. Sting Lancer and Fly and Sting are a little bit more contentious. This card is kind of dead, especially on turn 1, but it plays a very important purpose because this build specifically, instead of running the DP Scythe Lock, I like running Giant Bee Trooper Invincible Atlas. Giant Bee Trooper Invincible Atlas can special summon this card directly from the deck. When Sting Lancer special summoned, it searches a spell trap. That Fly and Sting is a monster negate counter trap, which just gives your boards a little bit more versatility because For example, let's say they drop a Dark Ruler and all of your cards are negated. Well, that means you have no more interaction for the turn. But if you're playing this B Trooper package, searching that Flying Sting is unaffected. That Flying Sting's unaffected by the Dark Ruler. So now you can actually, have one last piece of interaction that can, maybe interrupt your opponent and save your board. It's just something I like to play, especially considering the DPE shenanigans are probably going to be hit on the ban list at some point. I don't really think it's worth investing a few $100s on something like that, to be perfectly honest. And I just like these combos a little bit more. They just feel nicer. So that's just personal preference for me. It's probably worse in the long run, but I like it. So, that's the most important thing. Next, we've got a small Infernoble package. We've got 3 Durandal and 1 Oliver. This is pretty standard in most Inzektor lists. It's an incredible enabler for the deck. Durandal equips to any monster, allows you to search Oliver and then pop itself. That triggers an Inzektor effect. Oliver can take an equip card on the field, send it to the graveyard to summon itself. That triggers an Inzektor effect. So just opening with Durandal and either Dragonfly or Centipede allows you to have such flexibility with your plays that you can just pop off. It's quite insane. In fact, I'd like to run a second copy of Oliver potentially. And if I were to do that, I would probably cut that Cricket, just because Cricket is only situationally useful. But like I said, that Cricket has saved me enough times to where I'm not comfortable cutting it just yet. So for now, I'm okay with this. Just running that second Oliver would ensure that these copies of Durandal are just always live. And that seems really good. It also means that you could potentially use a second copy of Durandal on turn 2 if you have it and haven't discarded it for some reason. So that's just something to consider. And then finally, we round out the main deck with just some generic staples. Called by the Grave, it's at 1. It's really good. It plays through hand traps. It interrupts opponent's plays. No reason not to run it in a deck like this, in my opinion. Then we've got Foolish Burial, important for sending the exact Inzektor you need to the grave so that you can extend combos the way you want. It can also send Water Enchantress, which is essentially a 4th copy of that card. So if you have a hand that does work with the Adventure Engine and you open Foolish Burial, you can resolve the Adventure Engine. Or just fetch a negate, perhaps. And then finally, Monster Reborn, just some generic extension. Works really well with the deck. Lots of versatile ways you can use it. Lets you play through certain interruptions that destroy your cards, and that's really good for the deck because most of the cards that they want to negate are not actually once per turn. They're just once while they're face up on the field, and only for certain parts of their effects. So Monster Reborn is very useful in this deck. Onto the extra deck, we're starting off with 1 B-Trooper Armor Horn. This card is insane. It is just an extra normal summon for insects, and then it revives itself later. Very, very important for combo pieces. You're going to make this very frequently, though it is not necessary in the adventure line specifically, and that's because of zones. We'll go over that when we get to the combo. It also doesn't synergize perfectly with adventure lines because even though it gives you a second normal summon, you still can't use the effects of the monster you normal summoned. It's just an extra body for you to link off, essentially. So it's not hugely vital. I play it at 1 just because 1 is enough. If you don't want to use the revive effect, then essentially this gives you 2 double summons because you can revive it on your next turn. And that's just really, really good. Very, very flexible card. Very, very powerful for the deck. Definitely run at least one of them. Sorry about that. Next, we've got 2 Inzektor Pico Falena. I was running this at 1 before. However, I think 2 is just better because there are a lot of times where this fetches a negate or it gets Nibiru'd or something, and, you're kind of stuck. But both of Inzektor Pico Falena's effects are once per turn, and it's not like you can only summon her once. So being able to go into a second Pico Falena and potentially save your combo has actually come up before. It's also good as, a turn 2 play, perhaps. If you need to put your resources back in the deck, having a second copy of Pico ready to go is very, very good. So definitely run 2, in my opinion. I don't think running 1 is as good as I initially thought it was. Next, we've got Insect Shinobi Hagakuramino. This is mainly in here just because it is an insect link monster you can make with non-insects. That is very important to a lot of combos, but it does have additional utility, because if a monster it points to is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon a level 4 lower insect from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can essentially use this to trade a spent dragonfly for that same dragonfly, and that refreshes all the uses of its effects. And then it also banishes it when it leaves the field, so that potentially sets out Levier plays. It is very, very flexible. It's a little bit weird to use. You have to keep zones in mind a lot if you want to try and use this card. But as long as you kind of think about it a lot, your play in advance, you can find some really clever uses of this card to play through certain points where you might have been interrupted, just to get some kind of play out there. Definitely has come up before. Next, we've got IP Masquerena. Pretty standard. It's a link build. We're going to be making a lot of links. IP is a great ender. However, there is something to note, is that since this build is playing Giant Bee Trooper Invincible Atlas, IP is not totally synergistic. It's not a vital component of your end board, and that's because once you summon Invincible Atlas, you could only summon insects. That means that even if you did summon IP, you couldn't use IP's quick effect on your opponent's turn because there are no insects for you to summon. So it's not perfect, but, there are certain fields you can set up where you might be like, I don't really want to go into Invincible Atlas. I don't want to extend that far. I can just end on IP plus a monster, and that's good enough. So having the foresight to think about that, about how far you actually want to extend with this deck, is very important, because it is a deck that can use all of its resources over the course of one turn, and then if you get owned on the clapback, you might just be done. You might just be out of gas. So managing your resources, knowing what board state is enough to win, can be relevant. It's also good because it can be you can make this with tokens, and so if you resolve the adventure engine and you want to go into Appaloosa and you want to use that adventure token, you need to make IP first, and so that's another reason why she's in here. Just stabilizes a lot of plays. We've got Unicorn, pretty self-explanatory, not much to go over there. It's your IP target. It's a ladder into Access Code Talker. Not much to say there. We've got Giant Bee Trooper Invincible Atlas. This is what I was talking about. This card is kind of like a pseudo Towers. It is a 3,000 attack beat stick that can't be targeted, can't be destroyed. Basically Dragoons. However, unlike Dragoons, it doesn't have broken effect negation. It does, however, potentially search a monster negate, which is, a similar purpose. So yeah, it's a very sticky card. It's hard to get rid of. Generally will stick around to your next turn. It can also make itself really big. You contribute an insect to make it gain 2,000 attack for the turn. So you can use it to push for game in specific instances. It does sometimes come up that, it'll be on your board, it'll be turn 2, you don't quite have enough damage to end the game, and you want to make access code, but you can't because B-Trooper's on the field. But one cool thing you can do with Invincible Atlas is the effect that tributes an insect to special summon a B-Trooper from deck. You can tribute itself. So if it's kind of stuck on the field and just not doing anything, you can tribute itself and summon a Scale Bomber from deck. The Scale Bomber can be used as material and, go for that. So it 1-for-1s itself with another monster, and then puts an Earth link in the grave so that you have more things to banish with your Access Code Talker. So it is a very flexible card, very hard to remove. Not a lot of decks right now can just beat over this. Granted, it doesn't automatically win you the game because it doesn't have impactful effects every turn. It just kind of searches that one specific monster negate and hopes that's enough. But it's pretty cool and flexible, and it's a nice boss monster to end on. To round out the Link toolbox, we got Appaloosa and Access Code Talker. Again, pretty self-explanatory, not much to talk about there. You could replace the access code with, for example, like a Boral Sword Dragon. That might make OTKing a little bit easier, but for now it serves its purpose. Access code is just a little bit more flexible, a little bit easier to make in this deck. Doesn't require as much investment, and can even be a bit hard to remove in specific instances. So it is what it is. I like it at this ratio, so yeah. Next we have one synchro, and that is Herald of the Arclight. If you remember my last video, I had Borreload's Savage Dragon in here, but I've come to realize that Herald is just way better. It does essentially the same job, but it's endlessly easier to make, and you can make it way earlier. That's because when Oliver special summons himself, he does so as a level 1 tuner, and all of your like main deck Inzektor like combo pieces that you're going to be summoning are level 3. So you can make an Arclight really early in your combo to insulate the rest of it against hand traps, and that's insane. It's also a floodgate that is mostly one-sided, because in this deck, we're not really ever sending cards from the deck or hand to our graveyard, except specifically when we discard for Picofalena, or if we're trying to extend with Zektrike, but Zektrike has other ways that you can trigger it. It doesn't have to discard the Inzektor card. So it's just really, really good. As long as you just keep in mind when you make it, so that you know that if you make this before Picofalena, you're going to banish Picofalena's discard. So you do have to keep that in mind. You might have to wait to make it afterwards, but if you can make this, I definitely recommend it. It's really, really good. Having that Omni Negate is just so impactful for allowing your turn to resolve, but also for disrupting your opponent's turn. Next, we got Leviair, the Sea Dragon. As I mentioned, this card can be used for extensions in a large variety of ways. There are tons of times where it comes up. It's just very useful. Awesome card. Definitely recommend it in a deck like this. Just as a generic extender that can potentially be used to, refresh your Dragonfly charges, get a Centipede back for more searches. It's just really, really flexible. Next we got Cicada King. Cicada King is kind of just okay. It is essentially a fallback plan, or like the last thing you make on your turn if you have the resources to make it. It is a monster effect, but only for monsters on the field. Granted, it does negate the monster's effects in totality, not just that effect, which, situationally is better than just a negate for any monster anywhere. But the other cool thing it does is when it negates something, you can either make an insect gain 500 defense or change that insect's battle position. If you change Cicada King's battle position, its effect triggers. Anytime its battle position is changed, it can reborn an insect from the graveyard. So if, for example, you use Scale Bomber and a level 3 Inzektor or something to make Cicada King, you can detach the Scale Bomber to negate a monster effect, then reborn the Scale Bomber, and now you have a Ghost Ogre for monsters. Just as an extra piece of disruption for your opponent's turn. You do have to be careful, though, because Cicada King only has 1200 attack, so if you leave it in attack position, it's possible they might just use their battle phase to hit over this, kind of like you'd do for Apollosa. But if you leave it in defense position, that gets like less risky, but then it changes to attack position, and that's a target that they could hit over, and they are not spending their battle phase to hit over the Cicada King. They might just do their whole turn and hit you for game, or leave you in a state where you couldn't really respond. So there's a bit of a give and take there. You have to be really careful of what position you summon this in, given the current board state. Next is Dugaris. This is not as vital for combo extension as it once was, but there are situations where it does come up. I have been in a situation where I activate an effect knowing that if that effect is negated, I have the option to go into Dugaris and then extend from there. I've never actually done it, but it's there. It also, you can use it to just double the attack of Access Code Talker and swing for game, because that's just a really easy way to OTK if you just don't have the resources left in your deck to really push it to the limit. So that's just a powerful extender. You could situationally use it to deep draw for extenders that you might not have in your hand to, just go into something perhaps, but that's really risky. The main things you're going to use this for are the Reborn and the Battle Phase effect. Next, we've got Abyss Dweller. This is just kind of a generic rank 4 option. It seemed like the best thing to put in the deck. It is just really hateful on so many things that are really popular right now. Making this first turn if you don't really have something else, or if just kind of your hand was a little awkward, is never a bad idea. It's a great blind first card. It's an incredible going second card if you know that this destroys what your opponent is playing, because it's just so hard to out. So yeah, definitely a cool option. There's some other options there too for that slot. There's, like, for example, Evil Swarm Nightmare is like kind of a niche but really good card. Just, it's 2 uses of Book of Moon because it's not once per turn. Granted, you can only do it when the monster is special summoned, and it can miss timing, but still, it can be very disruptive to specific decks. So there's a lot of things to consider there. I just think Dweller is generically more useful. And then finally, we've got number 38, Hope Harbinger Dragon Titanic Galaxy. As I said, you want to try and make this on most combos just because it's a spell negate. But it also makes it so, like, for example, if you have a low attack Appaloosa, or you have Herald on your board, or if you have Cicada Cane in attack position, they no longer have the option to just summon a monster and beat over it, because Titanic Galaxy, its other effect is it redirects attacks. So they no longer have that out to that field. So it insulates your M board in 2 ways. It negates powerful spell attacks effects, like, for example, it forces them to summon a monster with their droplets so that Galaxy just doesn't negate it. The only thing it doesn't prevent against is Imperm, and that does kind of suck. Imperm is a pretty common card in this format, but, if they have Imperm, they have Imperm. That's just kind of how it goes. If they have Imperm and they didn't spend it last turn disrupting your combo, then they just top decked it, and, you can't really be mad about that. That's just how it goes. So onto the side deck. This can be pretty much whatever you want, but I will say one of the main things you definitely want to load up on is spell trap removal, just because things like Macrocosmos and Dimensional Fissure absolutely destroy this deck, because so many of the cards specifically say send this card to the graveyard. You can't do that under Macrocosmos or Dimensional Fissure. Even though it's technically a spell card, when it's equipped, when it's sent to the graveyard, it is considered a monster, even though that is a spell effect. It's just really confusing and stupid and just hard to play around. So spell trap removal is a must, and that's why we're playing 1 Harpies and 3 Cosmic Cyclone. Pretty self-explanatory. One thing I will mention is that there is a case for replacing these Cosmic Cyclones with, for example, Twin Twisters or MST, and that's because, if you're not against a back row heavy deck, but you sided these cards in, MST could potentially be used to trigger Inzektor effects by destroying equip cards. So if your hand just kind of is doo-doo and you don't really have any other options, that's just kind of a cool thing that you can do to make sure your effects go off. It's just kind of like extra copies of enablers, and that's pretty good. However, I think the utility of banishing the card Cosmic Cyclone hits is just really invaluable, especially with things like, for example, Virtual World running around. Banishing that card so that they can't use the graveyard effect. Eldritch is kind of popular because of that 60-card adventure engine thing, making sure they can't use the recycle effects. Prank Kids, if you manage to hit the Pandemonium, you not only force it out, but then you banish it so that they can't recycle it. That kind of stuff is just really, really powerful in this format. So I think Cosmic Cyclone is probably the right card for right now. But like I said, there is an argument for generic spell trap removal that destroys, just because it's flexible with what you have. I'm running 3 Effect Veiler. This, I'll be perfectly honest, should probably be Infinite Impermanence. And I probably will replace it with Infinite Impermanence. I just had Effect Veilers on hand, so that's what I'm running for right now. Imperm just does the same job a lot better, and right now we don't really have any effects that abuse Effect Veiler as like a level 1 tuner. I guess in certain situations you could use this to make like Herald, but you would have to spend your normal summon on Effect Veiler, and typically you can't do that. Sometimes you could, but like that's really kind of sus. So definitely, I think I would replace this with Imperm once I get some copies of Imperm in the mail. But it could really be anything. It could be Ash Blossoms too, whatever you feel comfortable with. We're running 3 Artifact Lancia. This card is really good in this format, I think. There's a lot of cards that love to banish cards from the graveyard on their turn. Floowandereeze is a big one. Granted, Floowandereeze is not the worst matchup for Inzektors because Hopper exists. You can pop the Barrier Statue, which is like their main floodgate, and you can also special summon a lot from the deck, and you can do that in defense position, so M-Pen isn't a huge deal, but just being able to make it so that their turn 1 play is a lot weaker is really good. This also has the side benefit of, if it's your turn, you can set it in your spell trap card zone and then pop it with Hornet. That's just so Hornet has something to pop. It doesn't give you any kind of inherent advantage. It doesn't like resummon the Lancia or anything like that. But having more cards that you can set down for Hornet to pop is really useful, because sometimes you just open Hornet and no Ladybugs, and you just don't have enough things to pop. You don't have enough things to get your combo started, so Lancia is pretty good. Next, we've got 3 Ghost Ogre. This is kind of a staple in this format in the side deck. Mainly, you just run this for the Adventure Engine, because this can pop Fateful Adventure. So that's the best place to disrupt the Adventure package, because it then locks out normal summon monster effects because of Water Enchantress. Because of Rite of Aramesir. Because that card resolved, now they're locked out of normal summon monster effects. They don't have anything to pivot to as a backup plan. So Ghost Ogre is pretty good there. It also is pretty good. There are a few decks that really rely on their field spell in this format. Those main ones being Plunder and Floowandereeze. So having Ghost Ogre in those matchups is pretty good. It's just generically pretty decent right now. So most people are running it. And then in the last slots, it could pretty much be whatever you want. Right now I have 2 Token Collector, just because, as I said, if I'm putting these cards into my main deck, it's because I'm taking out the Adventure package for going second. And so I don't care about Token Collector eating my Adventure token, because I don't have an Adventure token in my deck anymore. It's also a good option against Sword Soul. However, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I would probably replace this with some Kaijus. And that's mainly because, like, for example, on the off chances that you fight like Virtual World and they summon they summon their Macrocosmos monster, I forget, the Shen, I think it is. You just have an out to that somewhere in your deck, because it is so hard to find an out to Shen in Inzektors. Like I said, we have a lot of spell removal in the side deck, but we don't have just hard monster removal. Our hard monster removal is usually Hornet, but if the Macrocosmos is on a monster, we can't use Hornet. So I think I would replace this with Kaijus. They're just generically a lot more useful. And it also just 1-for-1s what they have with something else that you can pop for Hornet. So it doesn't even like hurt your combos by removing things off the field. So that's the deck. Now I do want to show a combo, like an example combo. This is not like random in the sense that I'm not going to shuffle the deck and like just play out a 5-card hand, because that would take too long. But the other day I did, randomly generate some hands for something that might be interesting to show off. And I think I did find something that's pretty interesting. So I'm going to show it off now, just to give you an idea of how this deck plays through the Adventure Engine. So here is our starting hand, right? We've got Fateful Adventure, Water Enchantress, Zektrite, Dragonfly, and Durandal. So Dragonfly plus Durandal is already an amazing hand. That is full combo and then some. However, we have nothing to insulate our combo against interruption. We didn't open any of our Called by the Grave, for example. So in this hand, what you're looking for to resolve the adventure engine is you're looking for Water Enchantress or Right, Zektrike, and an Inzektor to discard. That's how you get a special summoned copy of Dragonfly. So right now we have that. And in fact, because we opened Dragonfly, that's not ideal because, like I said, the ideal target to have here is if this was a ladybug, that would be huge. You would have so much flexibility. But since it's a Dragonfly, it's not the end of the world. There is some cool stuff we can do with that. So let's get started then. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to activate Fateful Adventure. We're going to do this first because if this doesn't go off, that's totally fine. So we're going to activate its effect. We're going to search the Griffin Rider. Add that to our hand, and then we're going to discard the Water Enchantress. That's because, you probably know this rodeo by now. Water Enchantress, banish itself. We're going to search the Right. Now we're going to immediately activate that Right. This gets us a token, which we're going to summon just to the middle monster zone. I like summoning it there just because it's easy to keep track of. And we already have the Fateful Adventure in play, so we're not going to search it. Next, we're going to special summon the Wandering Griffin Rider, and now that that's on the field, we're going to activate Fateful Adventure's other effect. Since we summoned a monster, we're going to search an equip spell. And we're going to put it in our hand. That's actually very important for this route. In general, you want to put Dracoback in your hand, and you're going to see why very shortly. So now we have the adventure package set up. We have an Omni Negate. Our combo is insulated. If they activate something, we have ways to respond to it. So now we're going to activate Zektrike, pitching the Dragonfly. We're going to summon a Dragonfly from deck. For this combo, we're going to assume they have nothing and just show you the how it ends up if they just didn't have anything. So we're going to summon that Dragonfly. Send this. Now we're going to equip Durandal to our Dragonfly. We're going to activate Durandal's effect. We are going to search out that Oliver that I mentioned, and then destroy the Durandal. Dragonfly's effect activates. This special summons an Inzektor from deck because an equip card was sent to the graveyard that was equipped to Dragonfly. So we're going to grab Centipede. So here's where it's a little bit awkward. We don't have a default Inzektor enabler in rotation right now. So we need to do that. The only way we can do that, however, we have a way to do that. We're going to equip the Centipede with Dracoback, and then we're going to trigger Oliver. This sends the Dracoback as cost in order to special summon the Oliver. So now two things happen. An equip card was sent from Centipede to the graveyard, and Dracoback was sent to the graveyard. Both of these effects happen in sequence, so we're going to do Centipede Chainlink 1, Dracoback Chainlink 2, and that's specifically because we need the Centipede to resolve. We don't care if the Dracoback does. So we've essentially chain blocked our Centipede with the Dracoback. So Chainlink 2, Dracoback is going to re-equip to the token. This doesn't really matter, but it's just a thing that can happen. And like I said, we're trying to chain block to make sure that Centipede goes off because we really need it to with this hand. And we are going to get a Ladybug to our hand. So now we have our Inzektor like enabler in rotation. We have not used Centipede's effect to equip, so we are going to equip this Ladybug from our hand. We are going to activate Ladybug's effect to send himself to the graveyard to increase the level of a monster we control by 1 or 2, and that is permanent. So you're going to increase the level of Dragonfly by 2. Hopefully you can see that. This dice is a little not very good. Let me use this one. It'd probably be a little bit more clear. So Dragonfly's level has been increased by 2. Now we get another Centipede search because that trigger effect is not once per turn. We are going to add something that we can discard for Pico Felina, and one of the best cards for that is Giga Cricket. So we're going to put Cricket in our hand. So this is generally where you would make Herald. However, we can't do that with this field because we don't have the zones for it. Herald has to occupy a main monster zone because you need to leave your extra monster zone open for link plays. That's the backbone of your combo. If we do that, however, we need this Dragonfly face up, we need this engine face up, we need the Herald face up, and that's really cumbersome and hard to play through. I don't like that. So instead, we're going to forego the Herald, and we're going to do something else. So we're going to send Oliver and Centipede as link material for Hagakuramino. Like I said, the ability to make an insect link with non-insects is very, very good. And what all this does is it frees up 2 monster zones. So now we're going to use Dragonfly's effect, because we haven't used that equip effect yet, to equip that Ladybug. We're going to send the Ladybug, increase Dragonfly's level by 2 again. So now his level is increased by a total of 4, currently level 7. Triggers the Dragonfly. So we're going to special summon from deck a Centipede. This is pretty standard. You know, send something from Dragonfly, summon the Centipede. We're going to then use the Centipede to equip the Ladybug, send the Ladybug, increase Dragonfly's level, this time by 1. So now its total level is increased by 5. It's level 8. You might see how that's relevant. You want to get 1 copy of Dragonfly on your field to level 8 as quickly as possible, and then just leave it there. But you want to make sure that you're doing it on the Dragonfly that is going to stick around. This one is going to stick around until we make Hope Harbinger, so that's the target. Centipede effect triggers. We're going to get another search. For this one, you want to add one of your Giga Extenders. So I'm going to add Giga Mantis. Just because Mantis is a little bit more restrictive than Weevil. If we get stopped, I'd rather have the Weevil in deck. Now we're going to use Hagakuramino and Centipede to summon Pikafalena. Pikafalena's effect activates. When it's link summoned, you can discard 1 card and then equip an insect monster from your deck to one other insect you control as an equip card with a bonus effect. We do not care what that bonus effect is. We are equipping Hornet to our Dragonfly, and now both of our enablers are in rotation. We are now going to use Pikafalena's second effect. You can target 3 insects in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and draw a card. So with that effect, we're going to put back this Centipede, the second Centipede, and the Shinobi that we used to make Pikafalena. So that goes back to the extra deck. These 2 go into the deck. And then we are going to draw 1 card. It doesn't matter what this card is, so I'm just going to leave it face down like that. The only thing is, this cannot be a Centipede. If that's a Centipede, that really sucks. It doesn't ruin your combo, but your combo is going to be severely limited. So here's where we can do some cool stuff. We're going to activate Cricket. We're going to banish our extra Dragonfly from the graveyard to equip it to our Dragonfly. We're then going to use Hornet to pop the Cricket. This gets 2 triggers off of Dragonfly because 2 equip cards were sent. So we're going to get Cricket and Cricket. Pretty self-explanatory. So now we're just going to do some Cricket shenanigans because we're just trying to burn these effects. We're going to equip the Ladybug, send the Ladybug. We're going to increase the level of Griffin Rider by 1. Yeah, again, you might see where this is going. Centipede effect to search. We're just going to grab more things. So let's grab the Weevil. Ladybug, equipped to Centipede. Send Centipede. We're just going to increase the level of the token by 1. This is completely irrelevant. We just can't increase any other levels on our field other than the token. So why not increase the token? Centipede search. This time, we're just going to grab something kind of like whatever. Let's grab Ladybug, because we're going to need something to normal summon later to just send as material. So an extra Ladybug, we don't really want that in the deck. That's totally fine. We're now going to overlay these 2 Centipedes for Levier. Levier effect, we're going to detach one of those Centipedes to summon back that Dragonfly. And so now we are totally set up. We no longer need this adventure package on the field. Now, you could leave it there if you'd like, but it does kind of limit the, those zones being occupied really limits what we can do here. But that's not to say there aren't plays. For example, you could take these 3 here, make an Appaloosa, and then continue to pop off with the Dragonfly and just leave this face up. There's a lot of options here, but I'm going to show you what you can do by using the adventure package as part of the combo. Like I said, we want to make sure we're still insulated, so every time we remove a negate from the board, we want to put a negate on the board. To do that, we don't have a clean way of doing that, however. So we're going to do so with as few steps as possible. We are going to use the token and Leviair to make IP. This goes to the graveyard because the token was sent. Oh, that's not IP. There's IP. We're going to use the token and Leviair to make IP. This is the one point they can Nibiru in this entire combo. And so that's a little scary. If you think they have Nibiru, you probably don't want to do this line. But you need to do this because, unfortunately, you can't make Appaloosa with tokens. So, it is what it is. We're going to then use the IP and Pico Felina to make Appaloosa. Now, this Appaloosa is only a 2-material Appaloosa. However, it does have IP's protection effect, so that's fine. Now, we're going to overlay our Dragonfly and our Griffin Rider for Hope Harbinger. So now we have 2 negates on the board, and we've freed up a ton of zones. So, now we can start to go to work. Let's equip our Giga Mantis from hand to our Dragonfly. We'll use Dragonfly's effect to equip the Hornet from our graveyard. We'll send the Hornet, popping the Mantis. So like I said, once again, 2 equip effects, 2 equip cards were sent for Dragonfly. So that's Chainlink 1 Dragonfly, Chainlink 2 Dragonfly. Mantis has an effect. If it is sent to the graveyard while equipped to a monster, you can reborn an Inzektor, except itself. So we are going to Chainlink 3, reborn a Centipede. Chainlink 2, we are going to summon from the deck our final Centipede. I'll summon it here just because it's a little bit... No, I'll summon it here. That makes a little bit more sense for what we're about to do. And then we're also just going to summon a Hopper. Now, the Hopper is quite important for what we're about to do here. So, just keep that in mind. First things first, we're going to use this Centipede, equip the Ladybug, and now this is very important. We're going to send this Ladybug to increase the level of this Centipede that we haven't used by 1. That triggers our Centipede search. We're just going to grab Zect Caliber because that's a pretty generic option. Now, we're going to send our spent Dragonfly and our spent Centipede for Insect Shinobi Hagakure Mino. Sorry, not that yet. We're going to send it for B-Trooper Armor Horn. We're going to use the effect of B-Trooper Armor Horn to get an extra normal summon, though we technically don't need to do that. We haven't used our normal summon yet, surprisingly. So you don't have to activate Armor Horn to do it, but it's a free resource, so why not? Now we're going to send, like I said, this was just the card you needed to search that could be normal summon that you didn't care about putting in the grave. Ladybug's an ideal target for that. So we're going to send the Armor Horn and the Ladybug. Now we're going to summon the Insect Shinobi Hagakure Mino. Putting the Armor Horn in the graveyard is very, very important, so we just need to do that quickly. So now, before we do anything else, we're going to equip Giga Weevil to our fresh Centipede, and then use the Centipede to equip Hornet. Now, once again, we're going to send Hornet to pop Weevil. And just like that Dragonfly, we're going to get Centipede Chainlink 1, Centipede Chainlink 2, Weevil Chainlink 3, because Weevil has almost the same effect as Mantis. This is going to bring back one of our Dragonflies, and we're going to get 2 searches from that Centipede. So, there's really not much left in the deck. Let's search Dragonfly and Zektrike for next turn. That seems like a good idea. Now, we're going to use Hopper and Centipede for Abyss Dweller. So we're almost at the end of the road here. We're now going to activate Armorhorn's effect in Graveyard to revive itself by banishing 3 insects. So let's banish the extra Ladybug. We no longer need... We're going to replace this copy of Hornet so we can banish it. And let's banish the Cricket, because we're not going to need it anymore. That reborns the Armorhorn. Now remember, it does get banished when it leaves the field, so you might have reservations about using it now, but you need another insect attribute for the next step. So we're going to use Hagakaramino and the Armorhorn to summon Invincible Atlas. We're going to activate Dragonfly's effect. We're going to equip Ladybug, send the Ladybug, increase his level by 1, doesn't really matter. But by 1 means that next turn, if this card survives, it's easy access to Dugaris. This summons an insect from deck. Like I said, we're going to replace that Hornet that we banished. Activate Invincible Atlas. Trigger and tribute an insect, which lets us from the deck summon Sting Lancer. Sting Lancer effect activates. This lets us search Flying Sting, and then this is our end board. We have a set. We have a set Flying Sting, 2 Appaloosa monster negates, a spell negate, Abyss Dweller locking the field, and then optionally, you can also equip Zekcalibur to Dragonfly and just leave it there. That makes Dragonfly's defense 2600, which is actually really huge. But it also makes it so if you don't activate Abyss Dweller this turn, if they somehow wipe your board, if this goes to the graveyard, it lets you add an Inzektor monster from your graveyard to your hand. That's a mandatory effect. This does not have to be sent while equipped to a monster. It can, anytime it's face up on the field, if it's sent, you get to do it. So that's our end board. We have a random card that we drew, a Dragonfly for next turn, Ko-Oh to just push a little bit further next turn. Zekcalibur optionally, you can also just leave this in your hand as more fodder. It's whatever you want to do. If you plan on activating Dweller, I don't recommend equipping this. That just seems a little silly. If you do plan on activating Dweller, just keep this in your hand, I think, is the better option. And we just have a full board. This is a hard board to break. We have multiple disruption points. Like I said, a random card draw. This could be anything. It could be really good for next turn. This is just really solid. Now, we don't have much left in the tank for next turn. It's pretty much going to have to be access code wins the game or we lose. That is the one disadvantage of using so many cards to generate this board state. So there is, like I said, there is an argument to just not going as far. You have the Omni Negate from the adventure package. Why not just end on like IP plus a monster, the adventure package, and maybe like a Cicada King if you can make it. That's not a terrible idea. So definitely feel free to experiment. I just wanted to show off that you can still generate a massive combo even through the adventure engine lock. You just have to be mindful of what you're doing and when you're doing it. So I hope that enlightened you a little bit. I hope, you now understand a little bit of how this deck functions. And, if you have any comments, suggestions, any other things you want to do, let me know. Just feel free to let me know in the comments. So yeah, thanks for checking this out.